Um, Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present here my research into the construction of social identity in early Iron Age Greek rich burials. I will start with the research question and a brief introduction to the theory and methodology before diving into the analysis, followed by a short conclusion. In her 1986 article, Gender, a Useful Category of Historical Analysis, Zhou Scott pointed out that gender is a primary way of signifying relationships of power. Changes in the organization of social relationships always correspond to changes in the representations of power. Thus, the study of gender is crucial for our understanding of the formative period of the Greek world, i.e. the early Iron Age, as it has witnessed drastic social changes that are manifested in the archaeological record. My research aims to understand how women's social identity is constructed and how such construction changes according to social historical development and influence it in turn. I have chosen the cemeteries at the Athenian Agora as the starting point of my research and the case study to present here. The cemetery contains approximately 120 tombs dated from the late Hellenic III to the late Geometric period. The site displays a long period of usage and a clear sequence of development. Previous studies have demonstrated a strong correlation between the anatomical sex of the dead and the gender manifested in grave goods in early Iron Age Athens. Therefore, I'm following the established method of gender differentiation. To bring out the contrast in gender organization, the construction of men is dealt alongside with that of the women. However, gender is not the only determining factor of social negotiation. As the title of the project hinted, the material wealth in a grave is a useful parameter to measure the economic class of the buried individual. Of all tombs at the Agora, 12% of them contain at least one metal object, and the percentages of tombs having over 9 pieces of pottery and of the tombs accompanied with remains of possible feast are both 13%. Moreover, these three criteria are often fulfilled by the same tomb. In this case, tombs fulfilling at least 2 of the 3 criteria are included in this research as rich burials. Age differentiation is another way to negotiate dynamics in a given society. The maturation of the body and the process of aging decisively affect the recognition and practice of gender. Due to the nature of the research question, my data includes tombs that belong to the adults and juveniles who are at the threshold of adulthood. Current material study criticized the old approach of reading material objects as language-like and urges an interpretive reading of mortuary data where the culturally embedded and symbolically constituted information is manifested in the grave goods, tomb constructions, and performative ritual. More important is the reuniting of material culture and human agency. To achieve this goal, I'll analyze all aspects of material traces from the mortuary record contextually. The analysis consists of 3 layers. The first layer examines the corporeality of the deceased, modified by bodily adornments. Dress code is closely linked with the construction of the social identity of women, and it is a way of female intervention in the social political sphere. While textiles are rarely preserved, jewelry steps in to shed light on women's appearance. The second layer retraces itinerary of thing back to its original state as a part of an assemblage used in a unique context at a particular time to produce social meanings that are motivated by the natural properties of symbolic materials or the way they were commonly used by people. Funeral ritual constitutes and is constituted by individual participation in a somatic way, where transient social roles and relationships are formed through sensorial interaction and experience. By examining the material trace of burial costume, the third layer aims to go beyond the body's surface towards its multiple somatic experience during funeral and understand the effect they may generate. Oops. The raw material of bodily adornments can be put into 2 categories, metal and non-metal. Ironsmithing was not practiced in the Greek world until the middle of the 11th century. Echoing this timeline, the earliest iron object comes from a female burial, T63, dated to the sub-Mycenaean period. It is probably highly prestigious due to its rarity. Only in the early geometric period do iron objects start to appear in male tombs at the Agora. However, while iron still serves sparingly as the mark of wealth in later periods, it loses its prestigious edge as it becomes more common. On the other hand, bronze is the most used raw material, more common than iron, electrum, and gold combined, and its usage remains consistent throughout the period. Gold and electrum are the rarest metals coming from just 3 tombs. This precious metal is re-imported to the Greek mainland for the first time after more than a century. With its rarity and staggering shine, gold is probably used to signify not only extreme wealth, but also the significant social power which enabled the family to acquire the luxury from foreign trade. The use of gold and electrum further stratifies wealthy families. However, unlike iron and bronze, which are primarily used in female tombs, gold jewelries are also used in male burials elsewhere in Athens. 5 types of jewelry are identified in female tombs. Jewelries other than dress pin and fibula are concentrated in 5 tombs, and they seem to disappear during the time when the average amount of jewelry per tomb is low. By contrast, the general pattern suggests that dress pin and fibula more or less signify female tombs. However, they were not themselves the gender marker of the period per se, but the garment for which the use of pin and fibula is necessary served as the basic gender marker. Not only are dress pins and fibulae consistently used in female tombs, but they also often occur in a pair. 11 out of the 16 female tombs contain both of them. As discussed above, metal jewelry signifies not only gender, but also class. Among the rich female burials, there is a further internal stratification during the sub-Mycenaean and the early to middle geometric period. The deceased in T63 and T15 stand out as the most richly adorned females at Agora. Their jewelry assemblages show the greatest distance from the source, artifact diversity, and hierarchy of raw materials. One may postulate that the internal stratification is based on wealth and the display privilege signified by the diverse array of jewelries made of precious metals. It is noteworthy that the assemblage becomes more standardized again in the late geometric period at the Agora. Only 2 possible male tombs contain identifiable jewelry. While the female body enjoys more prestigious adornment, it is not to say that the male body is denied display. The figurative imagery in the early Iron Age provides examples of women portrayed with distinct and highly decorated garments. By contrast, the male figures are accentuated with weapons in such a way that the weapons seem to become part of the body. Although one should not equate the vase painting with reality or with grave goods, it implies that the female body and the male body are idealized very differently, and the differences is evident in the material culture. Unlike jewelry, both men and women receive a diverse assemblage of material objects as grave goods and offerings. It is clear that weaving tools are associated only with women, whereas weapons are exclusive to men. While this arrangement is nothing surprising, it is noteworthy that neither is common in burials. Eventually, both of these gender-specific grave goods disappear in the late geometric period. The decline of weaving tools cannot be caused by a decline in weaving, and textile making is by no means rare. Archaeological evidence in Attica and Euboea recognize a profound development in textile production from the beginning of the 10th century BC. The general absence in burial suggests that people did not usually bury women with their textile tools. Having said that, female tombs that contain spindle whorls are mainly the rich female burials, which exceptionally rich ones yielded exceptionally large quantities. While there is no evidence of a commercial market, textile may have been a valuable commodity for a household, and that the spindle wheels buried with women signified the wealth of the family rather than the division of labor. More interestingly, no agricultural tool is found in burials at the Agora, albeit the main industry in Greece is agriculture. While it may be true that a lot of the agricultural tools were made of perishable materials, metal tools dated to the late Bronze Age have been attested archaeologically. The preference for weapons over agricultural tools for male burials is obvious. The choice of textile tools for women and weapons for men signifies idealized gender roles that are restricted to a certain class. Although none of the painted pottery type serves as a gender marker, there are different preferences among women and men. Except for the early geometric period, male tombs contain significantly more wine-related vessels than female. By contrast, albeit not exclusive to female graves, women enjoyed far more non-dining containers, i.e. the plexides and calathoi. Moreover, the open-work calathos, mainly used in textile making, is yet to be discovered in male tombs. While female burial, T15, also yields a unique ceramic model of granaries and chest. Bearing in mind that Agora provides only a limited picture, the preference for objects symbolizing material wealth in female graves may correlate with the gender ideology at the time. With regard to the gender roles ascribed in Homeric poems, the pattern in the mortuary sphere agrees with the ideology that the woman is a guardian of an oikos, a residential and economic unit. The manner of interment, which is one of the most important elements of funeral rites, undergoes various changes among the rich burials in early Iron Age. Fire becomes an important element of the burial rites from the late Proto-Geometric onwards. Fire can arouse multiple sensorial experiences, not only the visual effects, but the sound of combustible sparking, the smell of burning matter, and the remarkable change of temperature all create a special aura for the ritual participants. Researchers suggest that the pyre of T15, the richest tomb at the Agora, reached a staggering temperature of 700 to 800 degrees Celsius and can sustain such a temperature for 6 to 7 hours. Fire is also mentioned in textual description of the funeral. The Iliad seems to suggest that the rites of fire acts as the rites of passage for the deceased to pass the gates of Hades. The use of fire from the late Proto-Geometric and Middle Geometric is accessible to everyone who practiced cremation, regardless of gender and class, whereas sacrificial pyres in the later period are more restricted. Although a sacrificial pyre is exclusive to men at the Agora, it accompanies rich finished female graves elsewhere. The rites of fire may have become more exclusive to a small group of men and women in the late geometric period, with which their families adopted fire not only as a rite of passage, but also to create a public spectacle. Sacrifice or feasting is another remarkable element of the funeral. Piglet is the most common animal identified from the fauna remains at the Agora. The bone remains are usually burnt, implying a rite conducted with fire. Burnt remains of young goats and sheep are also found in some tombs. The bloodshed of the animal slaughter, the pungent odor, and the crying of the animals would have created a multisensorial experience that stimulates emotion during an already very emotional funeral. Remains of meat-bearing bones from T15, T20, and T11 serve as tantalizing evidence to suggest the practice of a funerary banquet. The recovery of some plant remains from T11 and T13 suggests that more food is included in the sacrifice or the banquet. The strong correlation between animal sacrifice, funeral banquets, and the richness of the burial suggests that for both men and women, demonstrating wealth in the public arena may be one motivation for elaborate funeral. Moreover, these key rites provide visual, olfactory, auditory, and thermoceptual experiences, making the funeral a heightened sensory and emotional event for all participants. To quote anthropologist Elizabeth Zhou, these intense moments of synchronicity between people, which may involve synesthesia, are important not only because of the sensory experiences, emotions, and memories that they create in the individual. More importantly, they make the social group physically real, engendering vitality in the group as a whole. The elite families probably use this event to elevate their social status and strengthen social ties in the community. Moreover, judging by geometric iconography, female members of the community are not excluded from these key social events. Rather, they play crucial roles as the deceased and/or as the mourners. Female participation is marked by their crying and bodily motion. Some geometric vases depicted male and female mourners without observable differences. This may suggest that the boundary between the two genders is temporarily removed in the mortuary arena. Women actively created a sensorial stimulus for participants of the ceremony. The physical movement, in turn, unites them with the shared emotional feeling. Different bodily appearances manifested in the garments is used to mark the gender difference in the mortuary sphere in early Iron Age. At the same time, the quantity of the adornments and precious raw materials are not only correlated with the economic class of the deceased and their family, but also shifts along with social historical developments. Women in the Athenian Agora are amongst the first to enjoy new technology and exotic material. As society develops socially and economically, the amount of adornments for women increases significantly. The wide adoption of ironsmithing and resumption of foreign trade are reflected by the increase of metal jewelry and the arrival of gold jewelry. However, as society undergoes dramatic change, women's access to luxury also crumbles. In the last phase of the Agora, right before the rise of the polis, gold disappears from female tombs, and the percentage of female tombs with jewelry drops significantly. While the trend of development of grave goods largely parallels with that of bodily adornments, not only does the quantity of pottery in rich female burials stay consistent in late geometric period, but the number of pottery containers, a category of pottery that may symbolize material wealth, increases during a period that sees a rapid and considerable social development. Through analyzing the material traces, ritual activities that created multiple sensorial experience are crucial to facilitate the emotional demand of grief and empathy that unites the community. The mortuary sphere is a key playground for families to display their social status and economic wealth in which gender roles are reorganized. Iconographic evidence and textual records demonstrate that men and women both play important roles in funeral rituals. More interestingly, gender differences among ritual participants are often marked by different physical movements. Judith Butler states that the effect of gender is produced through the stylization of the body and hence must be understood as a mundane way in which bodily gestures, movements, and styles of various kinds constitute the illusion of an abiding gendered self. The performance of mourning at the Agora seemed to confirm the categories of men and women in a crucial public setting. Despite the temptation to draw a conclusion from the intriguing trends emerging from the Agora, it is nevertheless too early to do so at the stage. The Agora is only one cemetery among many cemeteries and burial plots in Attica. The small sample size means that some important features are inevitably lacking. Yet, this case study has provided a good starting point for future development. While gender has been often left out of the discussion of social and political change in existing literature, this project not only demonstrates the association between development in social background and shifts in burial custom, but also indicates the absolute necessity to take gender into consideration. It paves the way for analysis based on larger sets of data. The future project will include graves from Attica and Euboea. By doing so, I'm not only able to examine regional variations in burial customs, but more importantly, the interaction among different regions, which may add ethnicity into the intersection axis.